Now it's my pleasure to introduce Joy Loverde. Joy comes to us today from her home in Chicago, Illinois. She is a person who likes to plan and take action, as she describes herself. She is known as a path carver when it comes to family caregiving and solo aging. In addition to being a senior living expert, she is the author of Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? Her second book, The Complete Elder Care Planner, is now in its fourth edition, which was released in 2023. It has remained a bestseller in its category for decades. The theme of Joy's popular books is that when we plan, we have choices. Joy has been featured in such publications as the Wall Street Journal and on the Today Show and Good Morning America. Her website is https://elderindustry.com. And I'm going to put that in the chat right now. Welcome, Joy. Can you tell us briefly how you became interested in the topics of aging solo and caregiving?
So when I was a high school student, I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and the nun came into the homeroom and said, "Who's going to go to the nursing home with me on Thanksgiving morning?" And I raised my hand because I knew that I needed extra credit. But what I got when I went to the nursing home on a cold Chicago morning were seeing 7 people sitting in the dark. And I said, this can't be right. My 14-year-old brain did not comprehend what was happening. And I immediately was struck by the fact that perhaps people were not accustomed to talking or planning for their future. So the first book, The Complete Elder Care Planner, was the effort on my part to get people to start talking to each other. And then about 10 years later, people came up to me after I maybe was giving a speech somewhere, and they'd say, you know, I'm taking care of my parents, but who's going to take care of me when I get old? And I knew 10 years ago that that would be my next book.
Terrific. That's really wonderful that you saw it that way. I had the same experience as a child in going to different facilities and being with seniors, because my mother was a social worker who specialized in elder care, but I didn't think of it that way. That's very interesting. She often got involved when people were in sort of crisis mode. So,
you know, I came from a big Italian family. It just didn't register with me that people would actually be alone on a holiday, and it just wasn't right. So I didn't want that to happen to anyone.
it's lovely. How do you define solo agers?
Well, you know, the term itself has actually evolved. It used to be people who are unmarried, divorced, widowed, or never married, and widowed. But now it includes everyone because we eventually could outlive everyone. And it also includes people who have adult children. So it is now widely acceptable that we are or will be, if we live long enough, solo agers.
Thank you. Planning ahead is key so that one's home's finances, medical team, and social community are set up for aging well. Why do you think people may procrastinate on planning and being proactive?
Fear has everything to do with not wanting to deal with what may lie ahead for the future. So fear is the number one reason. I have heard from many people who don't want to plan that they feel that if they do look at it and open up that can of worms, they fear that things will come true. It'll make it real, which makes sense to them, but it absolutely doesn't make any sense to me. But I would like to say something about the timing of planning for the future. Right now, this is a fact that many people don't know about. So It is overwhelming to think about planning, as we know, but perhaps you're unaware that there are two very important years that are coming up in our immediate future that people need to know about. The first one is the year 2026, only 2 years from now. This begins the flooding of the long-term care zone of an unprecedented number of care needing boomers. So let me put it this way. I tried to get a hearing test at my doctor. And I thought, well, okay, this shouldn't be any big deal. There's a 5-month wait just to get an appointment. I'm sure many people on this call have also experienced longer wait times for healthcare. So procrastinating now is really not a good idea. 2026 is one to keep in mind. But there's another one that's even more interesting that we have to pay attention to. And that's the year 2030, where all the baby boomers are going to be over the age of 65. Now, those of us who are in the industry don't just say it's the year 2030, we call it the 2030 problem. This is when the boomer caregivers become the boomer care receivers. Now we have a problem. This is going to be something that no one is really prepared for, and we have to pay attention. So you talk about planning. It used to be, well, we think we have all the time in the world to think about what our future is going to look like, but we really don't.
Definitely being in the DC suburbs, we get challenges getting the doctors we want sometimes and getting to be seen. So we can relate to that. So what are the advantages of taking action?
Well, that you could have choices. When we plan, we have choices. This is the promise of planning. But I want to say something else about planning, because what we might be planning for our future is also quite interesting and may not be just about planning for care. So this is a common mistake. People focus on, well, I got to make sure I have doctors and I have everything I need if I get sick. But the question is what if we don't get sick? Being sick in old age is not a guarantee. The MacArthur Foundation in Chicago did a study in the 80s, and it was a 12-year study. And they said, well, what is true wellness? And it was discovered that wellness had 4 parts, not just one. So wellness also has to do with physical, intellectual, social, and spiritual. So how that relates to planning ahead is we may be having everything figured out for care in old age, but we cannot ignore the other parts of our life that are equally important. I think many of us learned the hard way when we were experiencing COVID. And we may have been perfectly well physically, but emotionally, we might have been a wreck.
Mm. And
So,
overcoming.
yeah. So when we plan ahead, it's not just about care for physical ailments. We have to take good care of ourselves socially and spiritually and emotionally, creating a life of purpose. So this is where the fun part is also when we plan ahead.
So important, life of purpose. What tips do you have on making friendships and being a friend?
Well, I can bottom line it by saying we have to be a giver, not a taker. So many people have come up to me when I've been giving talks, and they'll say, my friends, they just leave me when I get sick. And what's interesting about that is say, well, how much are you giving to that person? And so it's all about showing up for them. Also, if you want to know how to make friends in later years, you have to get out of the house. You definitely have to join clubs. You have a great way to do that would be volunteering. and you'll meet like-minded people. And interestingly enough, you'll meet people who are younger than you. So volunteering is a great way to get to know people. Bottom line, when I hear people talking about technology and how they're going to have technology in their house, it really has no place when it comes to people taking care of people. We need people. And so, as one of my favorite things, there are no robots in a hospital waiting room, right? We really will ultimately depend on friends, but we have to be a good friend. In my book, I give an assessment on how good of a friend am I, and I look at it from time to time to make sure I'm following my own thoughts. Just
Yes.
yeah,
Well, and
just so important.
definitely. And villages offer opportunities for volunteering and also offer support to our members. Our full members get help with rides, grocery shopping, check-in calls, light handyman services, and other help. And we offer events like this one to the public. And also we have special events and activities that are open to our full members and our community members. So if people aren't in this immediate area, they can also go to look online and find a village that may be in their area, wherever they could be. And Little
Yeah.
Falls Village, we cover 20816, Brookdale and Kenwood, and Friendship Heights covers, Friendship Heights Neighbors Network covers the area in and around Friendship Heights. So,
Chicago has an incredible village network, and I go to many of the events. And I mean, so many people are at the events, and it's so easy to make friends. So if I just have one thing to say, it's like, yeah, you have to get out of the house. That's it. And we have bad weather here in Chicago, and it's still, there are people who say, well, I'll pick you up, or I'll take a taxi with you. But really, it's about extending a friendship to someone else, and then you watch, the magic happens.
yes. So planning for an unknown future can be overwhelming. Your book, Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old, offered strategies to help someone get started in the planning process. What are some of your tips on planning for the future?
So I certainly understand the overwhelming part. It's a reality. So I have three top issues that people can tackle, and then if you only do these three, you'll be in good shape. So the first one would be, how am I going to finance a longer life? So right now, there are financial strategies. Even if you don't have a lot of money, you can talk to people who can help you extend. I know that the financial professionals always tell me that having money in the bank takes time. And so we need time to be able to do this. So number one, money. Look at your financial stability, and then you're good to go with that. The second one is housing. Where are you going to live? So that's the second one. And the third one is making sure everything is in writing. So the legal documents. So money, housing, and legal documents. So when you look at it from a manageable point of view and just get started on one thing, all of a sudden you'll feel a great peace of mind, and then you'll have the strength to do the next thing, whatever it may be.
Mm. So what's the result of taking action? How do people feel when they've done that?
I hear over and over again, they have such peace of mind. Maybe you have friends, or maybe you experience it yourself. If you think, like, one of the things we all did during COVID is we started to look around and we wanted to unclutter, right? And we took a look at what was in our closet or in the attic or in the basement, and we started to pick away at things that were cluttering our life. we all know how that feels when you say, I don't need this anymore. So planning has the same effect. It's like, whoo, I got that out of my way. And then we just go on from there.
How about the impact on the extended family?
In what way?
Well, if somebody takes action and plans, does that benefit other family members?
It's one of the greatest gifts we can give them, is because then they have peace of mind. But I hear this over and over again. If we are planners, it doesn't mean the people in our lives are planners. It's hard for someone maybe to say to a parent or to a sibling, let's say, let's talk about the future. And they're like, no, 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 I don't want to do that. So one of the ways that I suggest that people go about maybe opening the door with the family is to go first. This is something I did with my mom. So I created a list of emergency telephone numbers, my doctors, my coworkers, my neighbors, my social network in terms of where I go shopping and things like that. And I took this list and I handed it to my mom. And I said, Mom, in case something happens to me, I want you to have this so you'll know who to call. And she looked at me and she thought, wow, this feels real good. And then I said, well, Mom, do you think you could do the same for me? Just make me a little list of who you think I should talk to. So there's no reason why the older people in our life should go first. I go first. I warm up the room. I become the adult in the room. And I say, here, I hope this brings you peace of mind. And it did. And then my mom did slowly get used to the idea of talking to me about emergency contacts and visits to the doctor and so on.
What a great idea. In
Yeah, we
talk,
go first.
mm, in talking to solo agers around the country, do you notice any themes in what people say they wish they had done differently?
They wish that they understood that they would eventually, if they weren't solo agers at that time, they wish that they had planned as though they were. Let me
Mm,
give you an example. I read a very interesting study not too long ago about couples. And it turns out that most couples do not discuss what it would look like if one of them were to die. Most people don't do that if they're in a relationship. And I am privy to some wonderful groups on LinkedIn that have to do with widows and widowers. And these people are not old. They're in their 40s and their 50s. They're very young.
mm,
And many of them say, we never talked about it. We never made a plan. So the solo agers that I know, many of them say, I should have planned differently, should have planned as though I would be a solo ager.
Interesting. It seems that everyone wants to stay in their own home as long as possible, but you say this may not be possible for many people. Can you tell us about some of the obstacles to aging in place?
Sure, I so understand wanting to stay home. We love our homes. We love our neighborhoods. We love the people in our vicinity, our friends. Everything about aging in place is desirable. But the thing is, it's not about having a grab bar in the bathroom. It is not how we age in place. Though making the house age friendly is part of it, eventually it has a shelf life. So when we declare, I want to stay in my home for as long as possible, we then become the CEO of our castle. So what does that mean? We may be living with someone now, but eventually that person may die or leave us in some other way. So that means if we're going to be bringing in people for services, like even the guy who cuts the lawn or shovels the snow or cleans the house, we're in charge of managing our staff. No one else but us. How is it to have people come and go and we have strangers in the house? So that's one thing that's pretty scary in the beginning for most people, and it should be. The other thing is if to declare that we want to stay in our own home means we have to maintain fitness and health, and we have to know how to eat right and exercise to be independent. So we have to become our own fitness trainer, or at least make an effort to be good at being fit, because it doesn't work if we're not healthy. The other thing is if we are going to depend on technology to stay connected, just like we are doing now on the Zoom meeting, we have to know technology. We can't get along without it. Are we confident that we can stay up with technology and have the ability to be connected? And then what do we do if the internet goes down and so on? So we have to have a system for staying put with technology. We have to be the whiz at that.
Well, villages help in all these areas. We offer a Tech Tuesday and Thursday to Little Falls Village members and FHNN members and volunteers. And that's one way that people stay up on technology. We've also offered some events specifically on that topic. It is such an advantage. There's so many ways to take advantage of technology, especially
Yeah.
living alone. And really, when you think about it, the village is kind of the best deal around for people who want to remain in their homes independent as long as possible. We have, I think our oldest member is 103. We have several members in their late 90s and, across the gamut of ages. So, and some people just join young to get involved in activities and make friends. I myself grew up in the area where the village that I work for is located and the area that it serves. But after joining the village, I met more people, and I found out that some of my neighbors were involved in the village and I didn't even know about that. So it's a wonderful network.
It is. Something else we have to be very concerned about is forgetfulness. And I'm not talking dementia. I am talking about if we become forgetful, that could thwart our plans to age in place, because the quality of our decision making has to be really, really good. So we have to be aware of, do I have a tendency to be forgetful, and how will that impact my safety and security? So it's important. Do we have friends who will tell us, hey, you seem to be more forgetful. You didn't show up for this, or you didn't do that, or you didn't. We really have to be honest with ourselves about being possibly forgetful. It's not a given that we're going to be forgetful, but it is one of the reasons why people move, believe it or not. But
That's
there's one
also,
more. Go ahead.
it's so important with medication reminders, and there are ways to set up reminders and even machines that will, have an alarm go off if somebody doesn't take their medication. So those are all so many useful things out there.
Yeah, I think that the bottom line is there has to be a certain amount of planning and forethought. You can't just say, I'm going to stay here and this is going to be the greatest place for me to live, and do nothing. And it's important to know what to plan for. And of course, I offer that kind of advice in both my books. But it's that some of the things I talked about. How am I going to be able to do all this? And it's important to give it thought. Don't just say it.
we're running an aging solo course right now. It's being run by 2 local life care managers. And that's for our members and volunteers. And FHNN has also run similar courses. So we'll probably continue running that kind of thing every year. It'll evolve, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
who can we count on to take care of us as we age?
Well, the number one answer to that most people tell me is, well, my daughter and my son and my grandchildren, they're all just gonna just show up magically, and nothing could be further than the truth. Even though we have really, really good relationships, perhaps with our adult children, the modern day adult child is just under so much pressure. They are working. Some are have their own disabilities. They have their financial problems. Many people come from dysfunctional families where the children and the parents just don't see eye to eye in later years. And one of the most troubling things that I'm noticing is this huge amount of estrangement between family members that may come out of nowhere. There are support groups for people who are experiencing that with their children, and their children are flat out saying, I just can't do this. And they're becoming estranged. They're turning away from this responsibility and saying, I can't do it. You're going to have to figure out something else. So importantly, adult children is not the way to go. The best answer to who can take care of us has to do with where we live. It is hands down directly related to where we live with services. Now, by services, I mean, we may live in a situation where there are professionals who are taking care of us, but very often there's a certain amount of neighbors pitching in, friends, and some family. And as we continue to age, that revolving door of relationships that you mentioned will come into play, which is why where we live has to have a natural feed of people coming into the environment in order for us to consistently mean that someone cares about us, and they do the little things and hopefully some of the big things. So where we live matters. Margaret, I can't tell you how many times I talk to people and they say, I'm living in a single family home now and I don't see anybody. I'm terribly alone. And for those people, and I realize a village may be the answer, but sometimes it's not. And if this is the case, many times a move may be in store. Just so I want to offer some pretty cool things that I've been hearing about that people are doing. Many people are familiar with the Golden Girls TV show, and they're sharing their homes with each other. Somebody moves in with somebody else. But the problem with that is it does have a shelf life. Eventually somebody may not be healthy, or they decide to move away. So that takes a lot of management, but it might work for a while. My sister-in-law, for example, had a roommate. She was a college student, and my sister-in-law got sick, and the roommate immediately moved out. She said, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't know that this was going to happen until I'm out of here. And so it is not guaranteed that these people are going to stick around in a home share situation. Another concept is the one that I live in, which is called a NORC. Have you ever heard of a NORC, N-O-R-C?
I don't think so. Can you?
Okay, this is fun. So NORC stands for a naturally occurring retirement community. And what that means is people live in an apartment building like I do. And I am literally surrounded by people who love the apartment building and they never moved out. And we all got old together and we end up taking care of each other, especially with the people who live on my floor. There are maybe 10 people in this place that if they called me at 2 a.m, I'd be there for them and they would be there for me. So looking for apartment buildings that have a lot of people, you can meet them in the fitness room or by the elevator or walking their dogs, and friendships just naturally develop. And if you live in a great location like I do, you don't want to move, and so you make really good friends. So that's one thing. For the people on the Zoom meeting today who are gay, I have wonderful relationships with an organization in New York City that is it's called Stonewall Community Development. And we call them the older gray gays, are hooking up with the younger people. The younger people are moving into their homes. They're helping these people. And then they have these arrangements where they actually leave the house to the younger person, because many of them are in need of housing. And so this initiative is called the Stonewall Bridge. And if anyone's interested, just Google Stonewall Bridge. They are extending it to the United States, all over the country. And so housing is very much a part of the solution to being cared for. There's one more other thing I'll tell you about, and that is people are getting together who are pooling their money together, and they are buying these franchises. They're residential assisted living homes, and there are franchises across the country as well, that you can have somebody show you how to put together a house. It could be in the neighborhood of friends who have staff. They have a template for being taken care of. So these are just some of the many, many wonderful ways that people can learn to live together and create a system for long-term relationships. The veterans, there's tons of options for them as well.
That's very interesting. Yes, I have heard of NORCs, but not by that acronym. And about 35% of our members are in a local NORC. I'm sure FHNN has a higher percentage than that.
Yeah. So there's something else. There are plenty of professionals that we can align ourselves with, like the aging life plan. You had mentioned the life plan managers. There are independent patient advocates. One of the things I like to tell people to do is, if you have, let's say, an attorney that is you've used him or her for estate planning, we need to ask the professionals who serve us what they recommend in case something happens to us and we're aging solo. Who are their partners? Have they partnered with service providers? We could, go forward and ask them their thoughts on considerations for people who will help take care of us. And on that note, we also have to ask them to be aware that if we are using them as advisors, might we have an agreement between us that says, if you see that I'm not showing up for appointments, or I'm not doing things the way I used to, is there some way we can make an agreement that you could call someone in my network and make sure that I get help if I'm not aware of it? See, so there's all kinds of strategies to put in place. I think it's important for us to look upon our advisors for advice on, if something were to happen to me, how would you know? How can we make an agreement that you would know? And maybe you need to start calling me more. And so have a bank of people behind you to help me if I'm aging solo. Why shouldn't we look upon the professionals to make sure they're part of the solution?
Good idea. In the fourth edition of the Complete Elder Care Planner, why do you say that caregiving never ends?
Hmm. Well, first of all, we're in the middle of a longevity revolution. That means being 90 or 100 years old these days, it's not a stretch. So that means that we're all aging together. You know, when I was starting out in this, I was in my 40s and the old people were in their 60s. Well, look what happened. We all got old together, and now the caregivers are in their 60s, and the people we're caring for are 80, 90, 100 years old. So being in a caregiving situation means that the responsibilities of people we really care about will extend far beyond parents and grandparents. For example, I am currently a caregiver to many people in my life. I have two sister-in-laws, one with dementia. I have a brother who's a solo ager, never married, no children, and he has Asperger's. My sister, who's just a couple of years older than me, is newly widowed. I have friends who have chronic conditions, and a neighbor because of my Newark situation who's 95. And a surprise of all are three former coworkers that I worked with at my in my job back in the 70s. And these people are now in their 80s and 90s, and we stayed in touch all these years. So the caregiving never ends. And this is why I just want to do a little switch here. If we are aging solo, I understand that we're going to be focused on who's going to take care of me, who's going to take care of me, right? I mean, that's an important question. But we also have to ask who's going to land on my doorstep? And have I talked to them yet about the possibility that we're going to be taking care of each other? So there are some very important questions that we, as we age, have to ask ourselves regarding the caregiving questions, like who might land on my doorstep? One of the best answers to that is to take a look at your phone and look at your contacts, and then see, yeah, I could see we have to start talking about this. And what are the financial considerations of taking care of people we're not even related to? And what are the legal implications? What if we find out that one of our friends who maybe talk to us about caring doesn't have any money? What do we do? We've got to start talking to each other about the possibility of being each other's caregiver, including telling them if we feel this way that we won't be. We have to have the conversations now about, we got to figure out where we both stand in this situation, because I know plenty of people who have no intention of being a caregiver to people they're not related to, but it requires a conversation.
So the Complete Elder Care Planner, your book, how does it lay out the planning? What are the sort of different parts that it covers?
It covers absolutely everything: housing, insurance, legal, money, you name it. But the same rules apply as a caregiver that it does for a solo ager. Number one, talk about money. Number two, talk about housing. Number three, get those legal documents in order. And perhaps in a caregiving situation, the legal documents are most important.
Thank you. So let's see, we have a question. Is some of the concern about 2030 related to the discussion of Social Security benefits being reduced?
No, it is about the population of people. It's a population demographic research, and it has everything to do with the gazillion people coming into the care zone all at the same time. 77 million baby boomers going from being healthy and caregiving to not being able to do it anymore. It's a numbers game.
Mm.
It's going to be horrendous.
We have a question. What about a couple aging different times? I'm not sure
I
if
would, well, I would just say I would assume that would be the case because no one ages the same. Everybody ages differently. So let's just assume that, in fact, when I give talks and the people are coming into the door, everybody gets a copy of my book. And this I've seen over and over again. So a husband and wife comes in the room and they're getting ready to sign up, and sit down. And the person who is taking the registration hands them both a book. And the husband goes, no, 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 I don't need one. She's got one. And I go, no, no, you get one because she's not necessarily going to be the one who takes care of you. And so, but it's so funny to watch them. It's like my book has a disease. They don't want to touch it. But everybody gets their own book because everybody ages differently.
so. We have a comment. I recently had COVID, although it was unpleasant. It taught me that I could ask for help, which I don't like to do, and that people are unbelievably generous and desiring to help. I understand this is a temporary versus long-term situation, but it was a good lesson. So do you notice that people struggle with asking for help? Is that a common phenomenon?
Oh, it sure is. We need more role models to be gracious about accepting help. If we saw it more, we would know that it was part of being respected in our old age. COVID was the perfect wake-up call for all of us. It showed us what it might be like to be isolated and alone in old age. And every lesson we learned in COVID is what we could bring forward in the planning process.
The interesting thing about COVID was that when we walked our dog, people were much more social than usual because everybody was so lonely.
That's right. We did get more friendly, didn't we?
Uh, Another comment, these are great suggestions. Thank you. As someone who is between an introvert and a misanthrope, I do wonder about the future because I don't like living with others. My daughter was fine, but is now an independently living adult. So what do you
Is this
suggest
a
for people who are introverts? What kind of living situations?
Well, the villages is a perfect is wonderful because you get to go back home when you've had interaction if you want, but then you also have the peace of mind knowing that there are services available. It's all about who am I going to call at 2 a.m. Just living alone is great for a lot of people. But you have to have the person or the resource. Who am I going to call? That's the question you ask. Who am I going to call at 2 a.m? It might be the life alert guy. It's okay. But we got to.
Hopefully not the village.
Right. But we have to, but just plan on it. It's a-okay to be an introvert. I've got plenty of experience with that. But who am I going to call at 2 a.m?
We
What am
did
I
have
going to do?
somebody call us in an emergency and we're like, no, you need to call 911.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
yeah, we try to be there to help, but we're not a 24/7
Hmm.
organization. So another comment, while I plan to age in place, I am planning to have a home inspection to look at potential concerns, expenses.
That's great. That's so good. I have information about the need to have a home inspection. And then if there are caregivers on this call, that they can also arrange that for the people that they may be caring for, so that it's two-way street. Something else that just popped into my head on inspection, as we plan for the future, we also have to think about where we live in terms of the weather. Okay. And where the people that we're caring for, where they live in terms of the weather, hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, you name it. So inspections also have to do with the weather, and there we can make plans for that. Many people are, the numbers of people who become homeless because of the weather. It's becoming very common. So take that into consideration as you think about yourself and also your caregiver responsibilities to people that may not live near you. How are we going to deal with the weather? Because it's real.
Yes, we do lose power in our neighborhood from time to time. So some
Yeah,
people are
yeah.
fortunate enough to have a backup generator.
That's another time you get really friendly.
Yes.
I was part of rescuing my mother and her husband during Hurricane Charlie in Florida, and they lived in a wonderful neighborhood. And my mom's husband was just a really great guy who was a planner by nature as well, and he put the generator in between the two houses, and they went back and forth on sharing the generator power. So there's a lot of creative options, but again, we just got to talk about this stuff and come up with, what ifs.
Mm. Even if it's just a small generator to cover your fridge, it's better than nothing.
That's exactly what we did. They took turns making sure that the things didn't get wrecked in the fridge.
Nice. What do you do when you realize you or a friend needs more health care at their house, might need a care facility? So I think they're asking how you
Yeah.
approach that.
Yeah, exactly. This is a communication thing. So I am known for not telling people what to do, but to ask questions to see if they are in agreement that they need help. So that requires us having evidence before we open up the conversation. So Jane, I noticed that you weren't able to open up the prescription bottle. And I opened it up really quickly. So what are you thinking about your terms of strength in your arms? Is that a common occurrence? So things like this. I noticed that you're struggling going up and down the stairs. Are you feeling afraid of the stairs? Let's talk about it. So it isn't, hey, you can't open this prescription. You might as well call it a day and get more help. We just can't approach people by telling them what to do. We need to be compassionate, and we need to just sit with them for a while, gain their trust, and say, I'm seeing things that I'm wondering if you're concerned about them. My approach, Margaret, takes a lot longer. I know this, but I only have one criteria, and that is to sustain the dignity and the respect of the person who is experiencing whatever they're experiencing. And I want them to feel like they are in control, because that's what we all want. We want to be validated. We want people to surround us who we trust and genuinely love us. And the minute somebody tells somebody what to do, all trust goes out the window. But my approach, like I said, takes a long time. But I have the best relationships in the world. And things always work out because they know I genuinely care, and I don't tell them what to do.
Maybe more effective in the long run than even if
in the long run. And my patience level goes up. It's crazy. Sometimes I want to scream, and I'm in the room with somebody, and I get up and walk to the kitchen sink and get a glass of water.
How about also bringing in a care manager, like for a family member, for example, like bringing in an outside person to talk.
Oh, I'm in that situation right now where there will be nobody in the house. No, no, no. Right? So basically, what I do is I get to know the care manager first, and I vet them and make sure I like them first, and then they come with me, and I say to like this is with my dad. I said, Dad, Mary here is here to help me, and we're gonna go clean out. We're gonna clean out part of the garage. Is that okay? And so the person who comes with me initially is for me, but really for him, but not initially. So and I gradually get that person in the door. I have to be there first with them. And I like I again I warm up relationships, creating trust, warming up people to people. It's the only way I know how to do it, and it works every time. And I genuinely care about the relationships between me, the caregiver, and the person who's receiving the care. That's all I care about.
That's a very good approach. I'll keep that one in mind. Friends and relatives that aren't able to be my estate executor, nor can my attorney. Are there other responsible entities that can handle this function?
Yes, but we have to find out who they are. So again, this is a question for a trust officer at a bank, a financial planner, and an attorney, because they hear this all the time now, and an aging life plan professional and an independent patient advocate. The answer to that question will depend on where you live and who are the professionals that you can ask the question. And another person is a long-term care insurance advisor. So you ask that question to like 5 people in different professions and see what they say.
Does the long-term care insurance advisor help with things like getting the long-term care activated and
Some are very forward thinking and have created partnerships, knowing that if you have long-term care, they are helpful. Some are not helpful at all. You sign the policy and they walk away. So one of the questions you have to ask if you are interested in long-term care insurance is, okay, so when I need it and I'm in the hospital and I'm incapacitated, and I don't have anybody, how do you kick in? It's up to us to have the people that we pay to give us answers.
mm-hmm. Yeah, working with the networks is always helpful.
Yeah, and especially for people who are truly aging alone and they are only surrounded by professionals. And there's plenty of them. But they have to tell us how what's the process here?
Mm-hmm. With this aspect of home inspection interests me. We had a member who, when the spouse came out of the hospital, they had a company come in and look at the house for accessibility and what might be needed, for their spouse. Are there companies that sort of specialize in this type of inspection, or is it just, do people tend to just go to a general home inspector?
It just depends on the situation. If you have something in mind, I have found that there are specialists. So I would say, if I were to try to find some professional like this, I would Google it and I would say home inspector for heating. And then I would put my city and state in as I search and see what shows up. If I was worried about fire prevention or asbestos or whatever, I would get real specific in my search. I would also ask around, of course. General contractors have referrals. They can refer people. Realtors are really fabulous sources of information for all kinds of resources. The realtor, as you know, remember we were talking about money and how money is going to be the number one issue in financing a longer life. One of the things I always suggest to people is if you own your own home, find out right now how much you could get for your house right now. Just no commitment, no nothing, but have a realtor come and say, you know, someone that you may list your house with if you do. But it's good to know what's going on with your house. This is an investment. Is it going to pay for my long-term care? What is my quality of life if I live to 110? Find out today how your investment is going if you're a homeowner.
Mm. Super. Well, this has been so helpful. I think we've really covered a lot. We got through everything I wanted to cover, and I think, answered pretty much all of the
Yeah,
questions.
Margaret, there's so much that we can know. I just urge everybody to talk to the professionals, read my books, find out everything you can, and you'll feel so much better about just doing one thing that you could say, check it off your box.
So start with baby steps. Is that what you recommend?
Yes, I really do. Just start somewhere. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to start with the money card. Just, just start somewhere.
Well, thank you so much, Joy, for being so generous with your time and this engaging discussion. And thank you to our audience for the great questions and for joining us
Yes.
today. And let's see, what do we have? Oh, somebody said they Googled home inspections for staying at home, not selling. Gentrification increased interest in buying my home.
Wow.
So
See, it's good to know this stuff. It's just fascinating. Not too long ago, the homeowners everywhere in the United States were worried about millennials who don't want to buy. And they're like, they have no intention of buying. They have no intention of getting married, no intention of having children. They all have dogs. I mean, like, so people were worried about who's going to buy my house. The people behind me don't want to buy my house, or these big, huge houses. I mean, there's so much to know. Real estate is fascinating. And if you know what's going on in your neck of the woods, it's really interesting to find out now.
we are fortunate in that way, being sort of close to DC. Our property values here tend to be, knock on wood, pretty solid.
That's great. It's great. Let's hope
Yes.
it stays that way.
Yes, I hope so. So I want to thank everybody again for being here, and please do visit our calendar online. If you're with Friendship Height Neighbors Network, you go to their calendar. And if you're with Little Falls, you go to our calendar, and I can post those in the chat. And one of the things that we as a village do, what we help people also with resources. So we try to note companies that our members recommend. We check out reviews. We help people, with information. So I'd encourage you, if you're not already a member of a village, to consider joining the one in your area. And thank you so much, Joy. Really enjoyed this conversation and appreciate
Thank
all you do for your friends and for the rest of us as well.
I'm so delighted that you invited me, and I want to thank everybody for being here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we'll be in touch. Bye-bye. Enjoy.